90% of them are now boasting per capita incomes well above their pre-pandemic levels. But on the flip side, more than a third of all low-income countries are actually poorer today than they were 5 years ago.
To really understand what that means for everyday living standards, consider the actual dollar amounts. Developing economies are seeing an average GDP per person of around $6,500. But the gap for low-income countries is absolutely shocking. Their GDP per person sits at less than $700. Just let that sink in. Under $700. That is just 1% of the average level in high-income economies. What you should take away from this is that global growth has fundamentally downshifted into a much slower, way more exclusive gear.
Moving right along to Section 2. 2 ways to measure power. Nominal wealth versus purchasing power.
Because when we talk about who is actually leading the global economy, and specifically the rivalry between the US, China, and India, how you measure that power changes the winner entirely. Traditionally, we use nominal GDP. Simply put, this measures economic output using current market prices and international exchange rates. Because the US dollar is the dominant global currency, this metric heavily favors the United States. It essentially measures who is winning the global financial race. And spoiler alert, the US absolutely loves this metric.
Looking at the 2026 projections, the United States remains the undisputed heavyweight champion in nominal terms, towering at an estimated $32.38 trillion, largely supported by its resilient domestic market and, of course, the strong dollar. China follows at $20.85 trillion. If you stop here, it looks like America's lead is unshakable, right?
But there is a second way to measure this, and it's called purchasing power parity, or PPP. Instead of just looking at exchange rates, PPP adjusts for the actual price differences between countries. It shows you what a local currency can actually buy in terms of real, tangible resources, like labor, infrastructure, and energy. If nominal GDP is the financial race, PPP is the production and consumption race.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this completely flips the global hierarchy. When you adjust for what money actually buys locally, China's economy balloons to a massive $44 trillion, firmly overtaking the US at $32.38 trillion. And look at India, surging to roughly $18.9 trillion, making it the world's third largest economy on this scale. This matters so much because a dollar spent in Shenzhen or Mumbai simply mobilizes far more physical resources than a dollar spent in New York.
That brings us to Section 3. Inside the Federal Reserve, the Balancing Act. While global metrics are shifting eastward, the US dollar still dictates much of global trade, and the pilot of that currency, the US Federal Reserve, operates on a strict dual mandate set by Congress: promote maximum employment and ensure stable prices, which generally means aiming for a 2% inflation target. Think of the Fed like a pilot carefully adjusting the throttle of an airplane. Push it too hard by keeping interest rates too low, and inflation skyrockets. Pull back too much by hiking rates too high, and you stall the engine, causing widespread unemployment. It's a tricky balance.
And right now, the cockpit alarms are flashing mixed signals. By early 2026, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, the PCE, cooled down to 2.8%, which is great progress, for sure. But it's still stubbornly above that 2% target. At the exact same time, the unemployment rate crept up to 4.4%. So the labor market is softening while inflation hasn't entirely been defeated. It's a really frustrating reality for anyone out there trying to buy